Yeah, Benny, you had your chance to defend your atheism. Okay, you had your chance and you couldn't. Okay, you wanted to do the same shtick as all the other atheists were trying to do. So no. Okay, you can mouth off in the chat, but there's going to be a limit to that. Okay. Um.
Hello.
Oh, okay. I thought. Okay. Are you So let's see. Logical problem of evil or there is no God. Which of the
Well,
two?
I haven't got much time to talk, but I'd rather talk about the problem of evil.
Okay. There is no logical problem of evil in Christianity.
Well, I mean, it depends what you mean by evil, because I would say that if you're gonna define evil as that which ought not occur, if we're thinking about the objective sense, everything ought to occur because it's going to go according to God's ultimate plan.
Yeah, this is equivocation I pointed out last time you tried to bring this line of foolishness to me, and it was completely blown out of the water. Okay? When you say things ought to occur, they ought not to occur in God's prescriptive sense. Okay? But in other senses, they may ought to occur, depending on the context in which you're invoking that they ought to occur. Okay? So do
Your
not
mic's a
equivocate
bit. Your
on what
mic,
it means.
Jay. Your mic's.
Yeah, you're equivocating on what it means for things to, uh, when you say that things ought to occur, you're equivocating on that.
Well, I'm talking in the ultimate sense, which would be God's ultimate
I don't know
plan.
what the ultimate, I don't even know what the ultimate sense is. What is the
Well,
ultimate sense?
I mean the objective sense, like His plan,
I don't
God's.
know what that is. There, there,
Okay.
there, are- there are different senses of God's will. Okay, there's no ultimate will in Christian theology. That, I mean, that's not that's not a term I'm using here. Okay, when I say God's, um, when I use God's will, I'm talking it generally in two different senses. In God's permissive sense, in the sense that God has allowed all things sovereignly to occur, everything that God sovereignly allows to occur, and then God's prescriptive sense. So they're talking about moral declarations, moral truths, moral facts. Those are the two senses in which God wills things that I typically use. Okay. So, in one sense, there may be the case where something ought to happen, and in another sense of God's will, they ought not happen. Okay. So, when you say evil are things that ought not to occur, you'd be equivocating if you're not specifying between the two senses of which way things ought to occur. And I made this clear to you last time you tried to bring this line of sophistry forward. So apparently you didn't learn from your lesson. You didn't learn from your from your
Well,
last
there's
humiliation.
there's going to be three wills, right? There's the creative will too, right?
The decretive will, I lump that into. So I take different wills to be subcategories of other wills. So when I use God's prescriptive or permissive will, I'm talking about everything that does happen in the world. I already made that clear. And then God's sovereign action, I explicitly said that.
Right, now what I'm talking about is that everything that occurs is going to be in line with God's plan, right?
What sense of God's plan?
I'm just talking about everything that occurs is according to His plan. It's a
So
yes or no.
which will are you talking about?
Or whichever
Which
will
one of
you
God's
want to
wills are
refer
talking
to,
about?
whichever
No,
will.
you're the one that's making you're the one that's invoking the proposition. So you have
Okay.
to be referring to something. Which sense of God's will are you referring to when you invoke that proposition? Otherwise, it's a meaningless
Well,
proposition.
let's try and figure it out. What will then? Is it that His
I
overall
already I
plan?
already explained to you the two senses of will
Jay, you're
that
gonna
I'm
cut me
using
off.
or that I typically use. So
You are,
which of the two senses of will are you referring to?
or maybe I'm not talking about those wills, right? What
Okay,
I'm
then I don't know
talking.
what you're talking about.
Okay, right. So let me explain. So everything that occurs, right, is going to be part of God's plan, right, for humanity or whatever you want to call it, right?
Everything that occurs is going to be compared against one or two senses of God's will. Okay.
That's not what I
So
asked.
that is okay. If you want to call it a plan, there's not much of a difference, a distinction without a difference in the terms that I'm using it here. Okay, God's permissive will and God's prescriptive will are the two senses of God's will or desire or plan that I'm using here. Okay, so God's to repeat. God's permissive will is everything that God allows to happen, including God's sovereign control over the world. And then God's prescriptive will are things like moral declarations. Okay. Now, sometimes people will, I've heard people do like mix up some of the wills before, but that's how I'm using the two terms of will. Okay. So I'm using God's prescriptive will to talk about moral obligations, moral truths, and God's permissive will to encapsulate everything else that occurs. And so maybe permissive will might be a slightly better term to use it, but I'm going to call it God's permissive will to include everything that God allows to happen. Just anything that happens in the world will be encapsulated within God's permissive will,
Oh, well, let's say then God's permissive will
including
is
God's action.
cover. God's permissive will is going to cover everything that occurs, right?
Yes.
Right. Now,
Uh-huh.
what do you mean by a permissible evil? Because I take if something ought not occur, then it's not going to be permissible.
Okay, we already went over the two senses of ought that can be referred to, so you're equivocating again. You haven't specified.
Where am I equivocating? Sorry.
I just said it like 5 seconds ago.
Well, it seems like he has competing wills.
Okay, can you please answer the question? Which sense of God's or which sense of ought not occur are you talking about?
Well, I think there is only one, like ought not occur and ought to occur. I mean,
Okay, X, 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 please. I brought you on stage to present the logical problem of evil. You haven't even come close to doing so. So let's hear it starting now. What's the logical problem? How is it the case that the existence of evil is incompatible with the Christian God's existence?
yeah, I would say there is no evil if you define evil as that which ought not occur.
Okay, so for the fifth time now, and I've kind of lost count, but I'm assuming it's around the fifth time, we've I've put it to your attention that you're equivocating. Okay? Because when you say that things ought to occur and things ought not to occur, you're comparing it against one of two wills of God. So which of the two wills of God are you referring to when you say that things ought not occur?
Well, if we refer to God's permissive will, right, then under God's permissive will, I mean, I don't know what it means to say that something is permissible but it ought not occur, right? For one, what does that even mean? If we're talking about his prescriptive will, well, then you're saying this is a different sense, correct? Now,
Well, you're the one that's invoking the terms that things ought and ought not to occur. So I'm just bringing clarity to you. I'm not even going to use the terms ought and ought not here. I'm just going to talk about what is occurring and how it compares to God's will. Okay. So if you're going to say that things ought not to occur, then you're going to have to compare it against one of the two wills of God that have been laid out to you. So which of the two are you talking about
yeah, well, I was trying to get
when
to
you
the bottom.
when you invoke the
I
term
think,
ought not?
well, maybe you better define evil then, if you're not going to define it as ought not, what ought not occur.
I'm waiting.
Yeah, and I'm asking a question, Jay.
I'm waiting for you to answer my question. Wait,
You haven't
X.
answered mine. I just want clarification on how you define evil, if this is the
Okay.
case.
Evil is a rebellion against God, who God is. It's a rebellion against uh it's just a rebellion against God. That's what sin is.
Right, and rebellion against God is, I'm just going to use the word ultimately, but take that with a grain of salt, is going to be part of his plan. People rebelling against him is part of his plan, right?
It's part of God's permissive will.
Yeah, it's part of his plan. That's what I want to know.
Where's the problem of evil? I'm still waiting to hear it
Yeah,
because you're,
right.
you're not
So
actually saying anything controversial here. You're
right,
just you're
so
just asking me to because it sounds like you're just fishing here. You're on a fishing expedition. That's what you're doing, and I can I
no,
can
no.
sense these kind of things so easily. It's not even funny. Okay, that's what you're on. You're on a fishing expedition. So get to the point.
Right. So if people rebelling against God is part of his overall plan, right? His overall plan, I take it, is going to be good, and it's going to be in line with his intentions, and his intentions are going to be in line with his nature, which is
Okay, hold
also
on a minute. Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Okay, I didn't invoke the words intentions. I didn't invoke a lot of these words that you're using here. All I'm talking about is that God has two wills, that God has a permissive will and that God has a prescriptive will. Okay? So whatever you're going to say has to be in those two terms. Because when you talk about evil and what should and shouldn't happen, those are the terms in which they're going to be talked about within the Christian worldview. So any other terms you're going to use, you have to either define them or just abstain from using them.
You're only mentioning two wills. So what will refers to his overall plan? What?
We already established this. So get to the point,
Yeah. So
X.
whatever will that is, right? That is irresponsible, or you could say um, his overall plan, his will, whatever you want to call that, maybe uh, his sovereign will. I don't know what you would call it, right? But whatever that plan is, everything that will is, everything that occurs is going to be in line with that overall plan, and that overall plan is going to be
You're
good.
just saying the overall plan is. You're just saying the overall plan is the overall plan.
No, no, no. I'm saying
You haven't actually
everything
said
that
anything.
occurs, everything that occurs is part of that overall plan, and his overall plan is ultimately good.
So the things that occur. So for example, murder is within God's prescriptive or not prescriptive, permissive will, and that is not good. So what you just said is false.
Okay, well then when you say it's not good, right, but it's part of his overall plan, which I assume is good, if it's not, feel free to tell me.
God's overall plan is good insofar as it achieves His ultimate purposes.
Right, so murder,
But God can
well,
allow God allows things that are not good. So again, don't equivocate,
I'm
don't
not.
misrepresent, don't straw man. Represent what I've told you clearly and accurately.
Okay, so if God's overall plan is good, which you've agreed with, murder is part of that
Wait, wait,
overall
hold on a
plan.
minute. Hold on a minute. Good insofar as it achieves God's ultimate purposes. Okay. The things that are within God's plan, like, for example, murder occurring, theft occurring, people rebelling against God and coming up with sophist answers to the questions, those are not good, but they're only good. They're in the moral sense, but they are in the God's prescriptive sense. But they're good insofar as they achieve God's ultimate plan of salvation and redemption in history. So
So,
there are
so,
two senses of good that are being referred to here, if you're going to use them.
so anything that occurs then is going towards achieving God's plan, achieving God's goals, right? And that's going to be good because that is his plan is good. Anything that occurs is going to be good because like I've just said, I don't
No,
see how
no,
it's so
no,
difficult to
no, no,
understand.
no, no. X, X, X. I'm shocked that you're not even saying this. I'm shocked. Okay.
When you say something's bad,
When
right?
I say something is, listen, listen. When we're talking about the moral declarations, okay, God's prescriptive will, okay, that is different from God's permissive will. Those two things are different from each other. Do you understand that?
Yeah, and it seems like you're not listening to what
Okay.
I'm saying.
No, no, listen, that's all I need to understand. That's all I need you to understand. They're two different things, okay? Meaning that when we're talking about things that may happen within God's prescriptive will, that may be contrary to what God allows and is enclosed within God's permissive will. Do you understand that?
I understand that's what you're saying.
All right. If you give me another dishonest, sleazy answer like that, you're off the stage. Okay. Do you understand that that is the Christian worldview? Yes or no?
Um, like I said, I'm listening to what you're saying. Carry on.
Okay. This is the last time I'm going to ask you the question, and I'm expecting an honest answer. Do you understand that's what the Christian worldview is? Yes or no?
Yes, Jay, I understand that's what you're saying.
Okay. All right. There you go. You had your chance. Okay. There's only so much garbage I'm going to put up with, and you're one of the worst pieces of atheist garbage I've ever dealt with. So, yeah, that's the end of that conversation. I mean, the amount of equivocation on here that it's just blaring to anyone who has a room temperature IQ and understands the basics of these issues. It should be in your face. It should be screaming in your face. That's how you can know that these people are sophists, because there's no way that they believe this, right? There is no way that they believe the garbage that they're trying to peddle, right? There's no. Okay, I'll give you another chance since no one else is here.
Right, Jay, I just have a question, and that is, can any being, any creature undermine God's plan?
Which plan are you talking about? God's prescriptive uh, sense or the permissive sense?
I know we're talking about his overall plan for humanity.
No, that would just be incoherent to say that something is out of accordance with what it is, because God's permissive will is just everything that happens. So, in order for you to say that God, everything that happens is what it isn't, that's just incoherent. So, I mean, I'm shocked that you would even ask such a question.
Right,
I
so
mean,
if nothing can undermine,
did you even think about that question?
right, so if nothing can thwart God's plan, his ultimate plan, right, then everything that happens is in line with that plan, and that
Well,
plan is good. Yes or no?
uh,
Yeah, if you're talking, it's not coming through.
well,
Yeah, you're robot. I didn't hear any of that, Jay. You're roboting.
We'll assume that it does exist. Here to hear out any case for that.
Sorry, can you repeat that? It was roboting. It's either my connection or yours.
Yeah. So uh, that people are not gonna thwart God's permissive will. So what?
Right. So sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you better get to the point.
Yeah. So if people can't thwart God's plan, and this is what I'm saying, His plan, right? I'm not saying His permissive will, but if you want to call it that, His overall plan is His permissive will, right? Then everything that happens is in line with His intent.
I don't know what overall plan means aside from God's permissive will. So, and I've defined permissive will.
Okay. So if His permissive will is everything that occurs, then I take it that, and that can't be undermined, right? Then I take it that everything that occurs is in line with that will, right? His intention. Is that correct?
I don't know what you mean by that.
You don't know what I mean by intention?
What do you mean that it's in accordance with God's all that things that these are things that are that the world that God or things that God sovereignly decrees will happen.
Right. So everything that God decrees, right, is this is what I'm calling His overall plan. Everything that occurs is must be in line with His intentions. How can it not be? It can't be undermined, right?
Yeah, I don't really refer to them as intentions, but we're just talking about things that God has sovereign control over, and that God is uh, has a sovereign providential oversight over. Okay, that's all we're talking about when I say that God's permissive will. So things that God
Right.
allows to happen in the world, okay, and things that God has decreed. So, for example, certain prophecies that God that may be in the Bible, that would be also a part of God's. I would include that. I know people like subcategories, but I'm just going to include it to be neat here into the permissive will. Okay.
Right, so you're defining it as everything that God has control over, right? And I don't know why you're trying to avoid the word intention.
Permissive will is just I already so the fifth, sixth time I've defined permissive will. I'll do it again. Will includes everything that is, was, and will happen at all. Okay? That's what's going to be
So,
included in the permissive will.
so everything's permissible, right?
Everything is within God's permissive will because God allows it to happen. That doesn't mean it's
Yeah. So
permissible. So don't equivocate.
oh, so I take permissible to mean that yeah, it's allowed to happen, right? It's fine. It's okay.
No, for you to say that it's allowed to happen, that God allows it to happen, is different from saying that it is okay in the moral sense. So I mean, like, please, okay, please.
Right. So
So
God
get
does
to the point
allow.
of your argument. Get to the point of your argument.
Yeah. If something's permissible, then it's allowed to happen.
Can you get to the point of the argument, please? Because we still haven't gotten to the rest.
Yeah. I don't know what you mean by evil because everything is allowed to happen.
Evil is
Apart
that which
from,
is out of accord with God's prescriptive will.
but it's in accord with His permissive will.
Yeah, evil can occur within God's permissive will. What's the problem?
Oh, right. So evil is out of accord with God's permissive will. God's
No, I
prescriptive
didn't.
will.
No, no,
Prescriptive will,
no. Yeah,
right? Evil is out of accord with God's prescriptive will, but it's in accord with His permissive will, right? Now, are
yeah.
both of these wills in accord with His nature?
I don't know what that means.
Well, if God has a will, right, I take it that anything that is a will, is willed, is going to be in accord with His nature.
Just I don't know what that means. You just haven't explained what it means for those two wills to be in accordance with God.
Okay, well, I take God's nature to be good, right? So therefore, anything that's in line with any of His will is going to
What
be
do you mean
good.
by good? What do you mean? Wait, what do you mean by?
What do I mean by good?
Yeah,
I usually define what's good as that which ought to occur, but you don't like that definition.
yeah, because you're equivocating. So when we say good, we're talking about God's permissive will, or not permissive
What
will,
do you mean
God's
by
prescriptive
good?
will. God's prescriptive will.
Right, so one of His wills is not in line with His nature.
You still haven't defined what it means to be in line with God's nature, so I don't know what I can't answer.
Well, I did try to define that. I said that. Well, I
Yeah,
tried to
and then
give
you
it
well no
explanation.
you did well you tried you might have tried to but you didn't successfully because you then kind of stalled and then you couldn't answer the question when I asked you to define what good meant. So you didn't really answer the question.
Yeah. So what I mean by if His nature's good, right? And I defined what that meant, and you said that only applies to His was it his prescriptive will, right? The oughts and ought nots, right? But what I'm trying to say is that if God's nature is good, then His will, whether it be any kind of will, is going to be um, it's going to be good also because anything God wills is going to be good, right?
Anything God wills. I'm sorry, I'm missing the point of what you're saying.
Well, maybe I'm just confused of what will means. What
You
do you
are
take will?
you probably are confused. So I'll explain it again. Okay, when we're talking about God's permissive will, we're talking about everything that God allows to happen. So everything that God allows to happen is not morally good. Okay, God's prescriptive will is a moral.
Yes. How do you define will?
I'm not. I'm just talking. I'm just. I use the term permissive will and prescriptive will as a compound term, so I'm not really talking about a will or intention in the strict.
Or would you mean a compound term?
A compound term is a term that is a conjunction of two different words, two or more different words. So I'm taking the word permissive will as one concept. I'm not really talking about a. I'm not splitting those two words.
Yes. So how do you
Now
define
the
will?
word will. The word will. I'm not really talking about a will. I'm talking about God's permissive will that refers to a concept about things that happen or things that are in accordance with, like for example, God's prescriptive will, things that are in accordance with God's essential characteristics.
Right. So
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 the
you
word
use the word will,
will.
but I want to know what that word means.
Okay, so X, can you please answer the question, please, or can you please get to the point of your
Yeah, I want to know how you define will.
I all my terms already.
Yeah,
It is
you
not
haven't
relevant in
defined.
this course. It's not
You haven't
relevant.
defined. Why is it not relevant? You're using the word will.
I'm using the word permissive will and prescriptive will, which is a compound phrase, as I already went over.
Yeah. So what does will mean, Jay?
Well, the word will is not really an important. I'm just using the term permissive will. I'm not using the word will, so I'm not splitting the two words from each other. I'm taking the two as a compound word. It's a phrase. So the words independently of each other don't like necessarily contribute. I'm taking the words to mean it's a whole word. Like it's one unit. I'm not dividing between each word to contribute to the meaning of the compound phrase necessarily.
Right. So let's
So
get this
the
straight
word
then.
prescriptive. So the word prescriptive will just refers to, and it's just a common term in Christian theology. It just refers to God's essential moral nature, and God's permissive will is God's things that God has allowed to happen. So just everything that occurs within the course of history. Now, the reason the word will is attributed to that is because God, of course, God is sovereign over them. So when we talk about God's permissive will, it's only because God is allowing them to happen, and God is, of course, conscious of them that we call them like a permissive will. But I'm not really using the word will here in the strictest sense. I'm just using the term that has been commonly and historically used for centuries to refer to a concept. Okay, so concept that's really being talked about here, and we can just use X and Y here. So X just refers to things that are in accordance to God's essential moral character, and Y just refers to everything that God allows to happen or everything that happens in the world. Okay.
Yeah. So we're talking about God's wills, and you won't define the word will, or you're saying it's
Okay. Can you
irrelevant.
can you please? So look, I've already exhaustively now explained how I'm using terms, so it's not unclear to you. So if we're going to pretend like it's unclear to you, then that's going to be a reason for us to move on and end the conversation. So don't
If
please
if
don't
you
give me
don't
an
want to,
don't give me an excuse to do. Don't give me an excuse. Okay. So let's hear your substantiation for the problem of evil.
yeah. So if you don't want to define will, then I have no interest in talking to you because you're just dishonest.
All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, he's just a joke. He wants to play this. Oh, what's the will? And then I remember last time. Oh, mine. How about God's? He's just, yeah, he's just, and he didn't even answer the question. You know, Oh, I don't even know what to say anymore.
I mean, this is just par for the course when we're talking about atheists, right? They don't want to accurately represent the Christian position. They don't want to actually come up with a coherent line of reasoning. So X failed in his task to present the logical problem of evil. He was given ample time. He was given two chances on stage, and neither of which did he actually substantiate that there was a problem of evil, right? Which is what he was trying to do. Why would it take him this long to do so? Right? I thought he understood Christianity. I thought he was able to accurately represent the Christian worldview when he's presenting the problem of evil. Right? I thought he already had access to these kind of definitions already. Right? But he
Yeah,
was
I
obviously
mean, just
equivocating.
yeah. What I do is give him a definition, give him a verse, and then okay, here you go. And now J.K. defend what defend is there not the title logical problem of evil, you know. But then he's gonna try to be like, oh, how about the will? Yeah, yeah. And probably he'll say the same nonsense again. Like it's like haven't learned nothing. So, God damn. Yeah, I'll probably read some verses right now. Matthew 6:10.
Okay, so Jeff, this is embarrassing. Okay, honestly, um, I mean, are you really going to try to, you know, peddle this sophistry right now in front of everyone and equivocate in front of everyone?
What's
Honestly,
the
okay. So
sophistry?
Jack,
What's the
why don't you
sophistry?
explain to us the problem of evil, the logical problem of evil? Why don't you explain that
What's
to
the
us?
sophistry I was peddling?
Jack, can you please explain to us the logical problem of evil?
Well, no, you made a personal attack, called me a
Okay,
sophist.
all right.
What
So
sophistry
so
am I peddling?
either you will present the logical problem of evil right now, or you're off the stage.
You
So
don't
which
know
of
the
the two is
logical
it?
problem of evil?
Which of the two
Okay.
is it?
Well, look, if you want to just be a bully, go fuck yourself and rot in hell, you piece of shit.
Okay, so
There's my answer.
you have one more chance. So go ahead. This is your time to present the logical problem of evil.
Well,
Otherwise,
you've already saying there is
the
no
ball's in
logical
your
problem
court.
of evil. So
Okay, I just made one. So the
Wow.
ball's in your court. The ball's in your court. This is your decision to make. So either you're going to run away, do an action that you know is going to lead to me taking you off the stage,
how
right?
did you
Which is
solve
not
the
answering
problem
the
of evil?
question, or you're going to present the logical problem of evil. So the ball's in your court now, Jack.
Well, no,
So go ahead and
you're
take
saying
it.
there is none.
Take what you're
So
gonna do.
you're saying there is
what
none.
is the
So how did you
logical?
solve it?
So I want
JRobin,
you to
just
explain
cut
to
the
us.
theatrics. Just give us.
This is the task. Okay. Now either you fulfill the task,
You started the stage.
or either you fulfill the task.
Just
Either you
explain
fulfill.
how you
Don't ever
solved
talk.
the
Okay.
problem.
All right. There you go. All right.
Goodbye.
Now, I gave him a
See?
chance.
Yeah, you did. There you go again. They come up here. They don't want to defend. They just want to bicker and yeah. Oh, you say there's no you. Okay, then why you even up here? You know, defend your position or just go back in the audience. It's that simple.
And now he wants to come back on stage. So I'm going to give you one more chance, and I'm going to explain to you, okay, because you're off the stage, you're not going to overtalk me right now. So I'm going to explain to you what the parameters of this conversation are going to be. If you fall out of the lines of the parameter of this conversation, then you're off the stage, okay? What you're going to do when you come on stage is to present your case for the logical problem of evil of God against the Christian God, meaning that you're going to explain to us how the existence of evil, okay, which is out of accords with God's prescriptive will, is incompatible with the Christian God's existence. If you don't do that when you come on the stage, then you're off the stage. I don't want to hear anything else about your complaints. I don't want to hear any of your personal, emotional problems. I'm not interested in any of that. So if you start with it, I'm going to finish it by kicking you off the stage. All right, this is your first and last warning. I already gave you a first warning, but this is your last warning. Okay, so now you're invited on the stage. You know what you need to do. Okay, how is the existence of evil incompatible with the Christian God's existence? Go ahead and explain.
Well, the logical problem that was initially brought up was if he's all knowing, all powerful, and omnibenevolent, then where does evil come from?
Okay. A question is not a logical problem of evil. I'm surprised this is what you're going with. I mean, is this the
Well,
best you have to offer, Jack?
well, no,
Really?
that's the original logical problem of evil that was brought up.
No, no. The logical problem of evil is to point out a contradiction. A contradiction is not a question, Jack. Okay, so you're patently wrong
No,
about that last
I'm just
statement. The problem
explaining
of
the
evil,
logical problem of
the
evil.
problem of evil. No, no,
Omnibenevolence.
you well, no. Okay, hold on a minute, Jack. Jack, stop, stop, stop. Okay, you're just wrong. Don't embarrass yourself. I'm
Well,
gonna help you
no,
out
you
here.
haven't even let me
The
finish
problem of evil.
the
Okay,
point.
so the problem of evil is an alleged
Look,
contradiction
if you just want
with the
theater,
idea,
then,
with the
you know,
idea,
we'll
with the
just give them
idea.
theater.
Don't overtalk me. With the idea of
I'll
God,
overtalk you because
okay,
you're a
and
piece
the
of shit and a
existence of
Wow.
coward.
God. Okay, well then you're off the stage. Then you're off the stage. All right.
He
Okay.
didn't
See
give.
how easy. You see how easy that was. And now he raises his hand again. So he really wants to be on stage. That's what he wants. My attention. He wants the attention of everyone in the room.
He,
He wants everyone to see him self-destruct. That's what he wants to happen.
yeah,
Okay.
what he did was he tried to quote answer with a question. What a
The logical problem. So what he gave us, yeah, exactly. It was a question. It wasn't a logical problem of evil. It was not a contradiction. It was a question, which are not the same thing. So you have now a third chance, Jack, to redeem yourself. Okay, present the logical problem of evil against Christianity. How is the existence of evil, which is defined as that which is out of accord, it is in contradiction with God's prescriptive will? How does that? How is that in any way incompatible with the existence of God? Explain that to us, Jack. You're invited back on stage for the third time now. Let's see if you'll make it as much of a dumpster fire as it was the first two times you were up. Let's see. Okay? Maybe you'll redeem yourself. I doubt it, but who knows? Okay, come on, Jack. Let's go. Come on up. Come on, Jack. Let's go. Come on stage. I see your hand is raised, so you obviously want to be back on stage and make a public fool of yourself. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to do that. So explain to us how the existence of evil is in Christian God. That's, you obviously have a case. Presumably, you have a case. Uh, presumably, so let's hear it. It shouldn't be so hard for people who claim that the logical problem of evil stands and that it's existed for us, right? People who have an established knowledge of these kind of problems. Why does this have to be so hard? Now, aside, I want a reminder, okay? The reason we're doing this is because what you're doing when you put yourself against God is an act of rebellion. Okay, and we're showing you that aside from the existence of God, aside from the acceptance of the Christian God, aside from accepting Jesus Christ as your Savior, you have nothing to stand on. It's bankrupt. Okay, so what you have to do either is you will keep your mouth shut, as Darth says, don't say anything, live in your silence and rebellion against God until Judgment Day, or repent and turn to Jesus Christ, who you know exists. Okay. Now Jack still has his hand raised, and he's been invited multiple times on the stage, but he is not coming up. Now we wonder why that is. Wonder why that is.
yeah, that JK guy is just JRobin. I find it
Sophist.
disgusting because
He's a sophist.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's trying to be like, oh yeah, God's will. He's trying to ask you, JRobin, to be like, oh, you know what's God's will is, and he's well, not God. That's the thing. That's the they always try to be like, oh, you're a Christian, so you must know God. Like, how should I say?
Jack, come on. Jack, let's go. Come on. I sent you an invite. Okay. Text. Yeah, redefine. This is exactly, Jack has his own, insecurities of his own, which is
Yeah,
why
like
he has
our
to
will
resort to using
is not.
these kind of insults, right? Like he just, you know,
Yeah, it's
hilarious.
yeah. I just put
Um,
Jesus
yeah,
our way,
Jack, let's
our
go.
way, yeah, our way. But apparently, for Christians, or according to J.K., our will is God's will. He tried to make everything is good because God. It's like he's just he's just disgusting. Even evil, he probably will try to be evil. It's like, how should I explain it again? It's he allows certain actions. He allows